Okay, doke. Hello everyone and welcome to the DS chat room on transition to online. I'm just going to do a little bit of an overview of who the DS is in case you're not aware. Design Society is an interdisciplinary community of academics, industry practitioners with a goal of developing and promoting a robust, usable and scalable means of design solutions that is towards complex problems that sustain a globalized society within the 21st century. We are a global society, over 900 current members in 48 countries at the last count. And what are we about? Well, it's access to research papers and thesis on our repositories. We publish about events, calls for papers and different job opportunities. We offer reduced publication fees to our members and reduced event registration fees. And we see it as a means of supporting you to develop your career. How do we support designers and younger members? Well, we have PhD summer schools, young members events at all of our co-owned and owned events. We offer opportunities such as this to interact with your peers within the design community and also resources for younger members. And so we do a lot of our work through our special interest groups, and there has been two new ones. So Cognitive Design Science and Product Service Systems has just come online, and you can find information out at the Design Society website, along with a lot of other interests. So on to today's topic, we're going to be talking about design education through the DSEG, the Design Education Special Interest Group. The group is set up to do many things such as publish special issues within journals, and most notably the Engineering and Product Design Education Conference, which should be held in Herning this year, but unfortunately is going to be held online. So we won't get to see each other in person, but instead virtually. And on today's topic of moving online and supporting that, we have three speakers today. So Katharina, Stanko and Brian, who are all going to be talking on their different experiences with online or distributed learning or different types of programs within that theme. So I'm going to hand over to Katharina to begin with. She has a paper in Design 2020, which will be an online conference this year, on improving communication processes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope that you already see some slides of me. I prepared some of them because I thought about the topic from today, and I really changed a bit the topic about that I want to talk about, because we have a really interesting live lab for our students at KIT that is called ProVIR, Product Development in a Virtual Idea Laboratory. And I thought that would be a little bit more suitable for this day, for this webinar or online seminar that we have today. So hello from my side, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this online seminar today. And I just want to present the course ProVIR and what I can learn there for my research topic to make a good improvement in distributed collaboration in product development. But before I start, just a few words about who I actually am. So my name is, like Ross already said, Katharina Dürr, and I'm a research assistant at the Institute of Product Engineering at KIT in Karlsruhe, Germany. And I am also the head of my research group that is dealing with design methods and design management. And during my research, I am investigating a methodology to support the identification and exploitation of improvement potentials in distributed development teams. And I'm also only project lead until this year about the course that I will talk about today. So, but where to start? Before more than 20 years from now ago, Professor Albers, who is my supervisor as well, established a so-called live lab at IPEC, and that is called IP Integrated Product Development. And the goal of this live lab, or of a live lab overall, was to evaluate methods and processes of product development in an environment that was as close as possible to a real development environment, but still give us the possibility to shape the boundary conditions of the project and to make a good research environment out of that. And therefore, in cooperation with an every year changing company that bring us the development task for our students in the project into the Life Lab, he tried to close the gap between a laboratory conditions and the environment of an industrial company. And in addition, in the end of our ProViel course, or in our Life Lab course at all, the evaluated methods and processes from latest research at the moment were transferred to the participating company. And in the beginning, we started with a completely location-bound Life Lab. But in the last few years, we have realized that we also want to evaluate our methods and processes of location distributed product development in a Life Lab, something like my research and my methodology that I'm investigating at the moment. And this is where actually ProViel came from. So the latest years, we also had some events where the students met during the course at our institute, but this year, especially with the Corona situation, I think most of all know the problem. We did the whole project course in a virtual environment. And this year, around 60 students from our project have worked on a really, I think, exciting and I think more than current and important task for society, and that was to develop some solutions that enable digital concepts for education and training for the product developers of tomorrow. And this in a complete virtual environment throughout an entire product development process, from over the ideation phase up to some digital and maybe also physical prototypes. But what activities do the students experience in the project? So in the first phase, the analysis phase, where our start of the project is the aim is to get to know the task from the project partner and all the boundary conditions. And in this way, an information base for the entire project is established. And the result of the second phases are 3 so-called product profiles per team as a representation of possible benefit bundles in the form of, we need a product that, for example, an example of this year's project, supports the improvement of my soft skills during online video calls. And in the third phase, each team starts with one of the product profiles that were selected by our experts from the company. And for this purpose, 3 alternative product ideas were developed per team. For example, they show with that how to implement the product profiles technically and economically, maybe in a virtual first prototype. And in the final phase, each product idea that was chosen is implemented as a virtual and also partly physical prototype. But now the question is, what can I do to do that with my research on collaboration, distributed collaboration? Is that in this example, to make this whole virtually process over the complete product development process work, we needed to establish a number of tools that really worked as a virtual working area for our students. And we didn't really have one before. So that means we had to investigate about what the students need for collaboration during the whole process. And therefore we used as base as the Nextcloud. I don't know if you know it, maybe we can talk about later in our discussion, and where they had tools for communication like Talk, it's called Talk, and a project management tool like Meistertask, and a platform to collect and present the information that can be seen as just a normal wiki, like Wikipedia that we all know. And in addition, we used Zoom for the kickoff and workshops, as well as the presentation of the result at the end of every milestone, because we have in the kickoff of our project and in the last milestone, we had more than 150 people from university, industry, and family and friends also that participated in the final event. And therefore, we really needed a good tool to make this whole event work really good. And to finalize, I can say that ProViel, in addition to the great solutions that are developed, there's another product, and my Professor Albers, is always saying that the most important product from this ProViel course are our students, and they have the chance to develop in many areas and can grow into problem solvers who are well prepared for their future professional life. And that is something I think education and design is really about. We need to prepare our students onto the coming challenges that they will face in their professional life. And I think the collaboration, the virtual collaboration, is one of their challenges that they need to face and that they need to be prepared for their future life. And that's also the end of my small and hopefully short enough presentation. And thank you very much for your attention. And I'm really happy to answer and maybe discuss some of your questions or some of your points that you want to learn more about.
Thanks very much, Katarina. What we'll do is, if you do have a question, you can raise your hand or just unmute your microphone and come straight in with it. Whilst we're waiting, it's interesting to see all the different tools that the students utilised, and coming from my own experience with the Global Design Project classes, we do a very similar thing. We encourage them to use specific tools, but it's always nice every year to see the new tools that are coming out and how they're able to utilise it. This year, the one that we noticed was Microsoft Whiteboard, and it even has like templates and built-in plugins for things like SWOT analysis and Kanban and different types of things. I don't know over the years if you've noticed any new tools that the students are using to help them do their design work.
So we actually used this year just Google Jamboards, and I didn't know it before, and it is just, I think it's we can say a low budget variant of the other way, but I think it was good for the students to just have something that easy as Google Jamboards to just start to make something out of their own ideas. And I think that was just a good version of that. And we now I forgot the other one, what it is called, but that one needs to be paid, and we already needed to buy some of the tools, and then I think I was really grateful to have a tool that is working on the base. I think that was sufficient enough for our goal that we had, and that we didn't need to pay for that. So that was a great insight, that there are also tools that you don't need to pay for, and just to have the first start to look, is this really suitable for your way of working?
Perfect. Just pause for a minute if anyone has any questions. I can see Stanko's raised his hands. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're still muted, Stanko.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I don't know. For some reason, there was some kind of bug, so I had to click several times. Sorry.
Oh, you're muted again.
I'm muted. Oh, is it better now? Okay, yeah. I hope so.
Now, yeah.
So actually, have you maybe? I mean, did you suggest students to use certain tools, or they were free to choose, so they could choose whatever they want? Because this was actually what we found quite surprising at our project. So were there any given any guidelines in advance?
Yes, so there were some. We did say they need to use some tools, but there were some. For example, the tool Talk, that they couldn't use, like something like Zoom, or like now we use Microsoft Teams, and they had really many problems during the usage of Talk, so they switched to another. I think most of the students used Zoom as well, so that was fine for us totally. But yeah, it's like, you can say they need to use something, but if there are so many problems that that's not really working for them, they can choose something else. So that was for us totally okay, because it was already an evaluation of the tools that we chose for the first time, and I think we will definitely use something else in the next year instead of Talk, for example.
Have you? Sorry, if I may add, Ross, may I?
Go ahead, yeah.
Have you used any learning management systems, like, for example, Moodle or something like that, or because there are some specific e-learning tools which might be beneficial for these purposes?
we actually didn't use them, but I think we have a cooperation with our, so it's a little bit more complicated, the project. So it's split onto KIT and the Hochschule Karlsruhe, it's called, so another university in Karlsruhe, and they also used Moodle, but we didn't. And then we wanted to see how this is working against each other. And I think there are lots of great opportunities with less effort to implement something like that, where the students really can learn a lot. And I think so that was something we investigated this year, and next year we will. I think maybe we will use that too. But yeah, that's is another boundary condition that we need to discuss with our professor in this case.
Okay, thank you.
You're
yeah,
welcome.
I've got lots more questions for you, but I think what we'll do is move on, and if we have time at the end,
definitely.
or I might follow up by email as well. Very interesting to hear about. So we'll pass over to Stanko if you want to. If you've got any slides, you can load them up, or
yes,
there we go.
That would be great.
Perfect.
Can you see my slides?
We can, yeah.
Okay, great. Just to switch to. Okay, so I'll try to say something about our transition to online project-based teaching as a part of LP project. So actually, our basic idea was so we planned this project a few years, actually 2 years ago. The idea was actually to enhance existing e-learning infrastructure for project-based course that we had, and also to see whether we can finally develop some methodology for its customization and implementation for other courses as well. So actually this project is Erasmus funded, so European Commission funded, and it started actually 2 years ago. So partners on this project are our faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture, Politecnico di Milano, University of Ljubljana, TU Vienna, and Srce as our University Computing Center. So just first, I'll try to provide you with the context of this LPIT project-based design course that we have. So the idea is that to have 4 different universities, 4 European universities, and we have always one industrial partner company. So the basic idea of the course is to actually involve students in distributed collaborative environment, both multinational and multicultural in a way, with a goal to simulate the real industrial practice situation. Of course, for that, in order to do that, you need to have continuous support by industrial partner company. And actually, this is quite nice for students, because instead of only learning pure technical content, they gain way more understanding about business management and other social aspects of design projects. So this year course, it was actually supported by Electrolux. I believe that it's a relatively famous company for various home appliances, and Rolled, actually R&D department in Rolled company, which is actually supplier for various components and let's say subsystems for Electrolux. So this year they proposed 2 teams that teams need to tackle during the project. We had a washing machine, actually one aspect. So they had to develop one solution, innovative solution for recovery and reuse of water from the rising cycles, and dishwasher, which is actually they had to find a new way of drying tableware at the end of washing cycle. So students were organized into 5 groups, each 8 students, each in each group from different institutions. So we had usually team formation was 2-2-2-2. So we had 2 representatives from different institutions, from each institution, and we had 1 or 2 coaches per group. So regarding this transition, I'd just like to give you some insights about the dates and how we planned the course. So initially we had a workshop in Lecco. That was actually from 18th to 20th February. And if you remember, that was actually quite tricky period. That was actually 21st was the first COVID patient in Italy, in Europe. So due to that, immediately after the workshop, we had to actually run back to our home institutions. But we managed to organize this initial workshop where we had physical presence of students, coaches, professors, and industrial partners. We had 3 project reviews, and actually this overview of the project and course concept is relatively similar to what Katrina proposed previously. So the only maybe difference is that maybe more focus is on virtual prototype and on CAD work throughout the 3rd phase. Because I would say that at the end of during the 3rd project review, students actually showed let's say to a certain extent well-embodied and detailed virtual prototypes. And then final workshop, of course, we planned it to do it in a physical manner in Electrolux Innovation Lab in Innovation Hub in Northern Italy. But unfortunately, we had to, of course, cancel that, and the final workshop was completely conducted in an online form. Of course, due to that, students didn't manage to visit industrial facilities. But I would say that we organized this workshop. We had very good support from the company. We had executives from the companies. We had so C-level. We had various engineers, experts from the company, from all companies, from university members, and many more participants. Of course, for the purpose of this course, we had to focus on continuous communication. So we had to allow continuous communication, both synchronous and asynchronous. So we had to allow students to enable them to meet with their teammates for project advancements, but also to have more formal meetings with their coaches, maybe once per week, and then but sometimes before reviews even more frequently. So at the end of each project phase, they had to prepare a presentation for the project review, and they had to prepare a brief project report at the end of for each project review. Of course, in order to do that, obviously they had various tangible outputs they had to produce. So we had to focus actually on 3 different aspects. One is content aspect of the course. So it means that we had to provide them with video recordings of the lectures, with various guidelines, how to use various tools, but also how to perform various design activities. For example, let's say concept generation, various design methods like, I don't know, morphological matrices, functional analysis, network problems and solutions, etc. So all these information we had to provide to them in a digital form. Then, of course, a lot of suggestions and guidelines on how to foster student collaboration throughout the course. And as a 3rd point is how to integrate educators' aspects into this e-learning course. So in order to facilitate coaches to easily, let's say, monitor and review design process performed by students. When we are talking about e-learning infrastructure, we realized it's not about coding and programming completely new solution, because especially nowadays it doesn't make too much sense. But the idea is to find different tools, and that's also why I'm looking forward to the following presentation. But also, and what we heard in the previous done by Katrina, is to see which tools can be used and what we have to include in order to provide students with proper e-learning infrastructure for project-based work. So obviously we started with some LMS, a learning management system, in terms of such as Moodle. You need to provide them with file repository, you need to provide with distant communication tools, and various suggestions on messaging tools, project management tools in order to organize their work, concept mapping and idea sharing tools, and 3D CAD modeling tools. Of course, due to that, students were introduced into various state-of-the-art digital technologies, and the focus was also to try to allow as much asynchronous communication as possible using various cloud-based tools, and then try to merge all these into let's say complete e-learning infrastructure. So first, to give you a few examples. So of course we used Moodle as a central point with various links and various instructions on how to use all the tools that I will mention afterwards. Then Adobe Connect, which we found quite useful for formal meetings, and also, but for informal meetings, we prepared all rooms for different teams in advance. So for them, it's easier to administer meetings, to leave notes, and so that each group can easily tailor their own meetings throughout the different phases. In terms of tools that they used for producing content and for producing ideas and concepts, so they used mostly Miro for concept generation, for idea formulation, for analysis, overview of existing products, overview of existing research findings. They use WhatsApp, Slack, and Trello for instant communication, but also for tailoring projects and for leading projects. They use Adobe Connect, but also Microsoft Teams quite a lot. So we realized that some teams switched more to Microsoft Teams throughout the project. In terms of 3D CAD modeling, we wanted to provide them with several suggestions, because mostly they were used to using either SolidWorks, either CATIA, either Creo, or Siemens NX. So the idea was actually to try to let's say open their eyes in terms of collaborative CAD. And so we fostered them to use Onshape, Autodesk Fusion, 3D Experience, and SolidWorks, but coupled with, for example, GrabCAD as some kind of a PLM solution. Let's put it that way. And of course, we used OwnCloud as a file repository, because this is actually, I think, also important to discuss, because of different GDPR regulations at different institutions. So some institutions had more strict GDPR regulations, and for that reason, for example, we had to use OwnCloud that was tailored for TU Vienna. And in that way, they had a complete, let's say, control over the content produced throughout the course. In terms of feedback, we realized that students relied on a wider set of ICT and web tools that we suggested and then we proposed. They expressed preference for contents provided in a schematic and visual form instead of the traditional written text, or explicit cookbooks on how to conduct each individual stage. In addition, they still had problems with step file exchange during the CAD phase. Because some of them didn't follow our guidelines, and they maybe decided to use to CAD tools that I mentioned before, because they were more competent and more familiar with, I don't know, SolidWorks, and then they have problems with different versioning, they had problems with Exchange, they had problems with integrating that in the assembly. We realized that throughout the course, later throughout the course, they haven't used Moodle a lot. They would prefer to contact directly coaches. So maybe to think to some corrective actions in terms of Moodle introduction implementation. And we noticed that there are several learning analytics modules provided in all these tools, in many tools that I mentioned, like Onshape or some things that are allowed in Microsoft Teams or in Moodle, etc. So just to give you some insight about the solutions and the level of detail that they will provide in the end. So these are 5 teams produced 5 different solutions. I must say that both Electrolux and Rolled were very happy with the provided output, and in a way they all even offered immediately to let's say partner to agree on the next year project. So obviously, let's say that e-learning support was enough to a certain extent. So thank you very much for your attention. Sorry for maybe being slightly too long.
Thanks very much, Stanko, and very interesting to hear about the specifics of the course there. The one thing I'm interested in actually is the CAD integration, because it's something that we struggle with. Usually it becomes, you know, one person's job to handle the CAD and to make the model and to share screenshots even. But you mentioned Onshape and different tools there. Is there a way we can get the students to act more collaboratively and sharing models and actually iterating on each other's models?
Well, actually, I think I could talk, and I see that Nicole also joined. I think we can talk about that quite a lot, because actually what we really realized also that you cannot really force students to use all these tools. So you would realize that maybe some students would use these tools, some students would decide not to use them, and then someone else should integrate and find some kind of intermediate solution to still combine these different components into one overall assembly. So but on the other hand, we realized that Onshape could be really, really useful. It depends on the level of detail of maybe certain product, and maybe on requirements of the project, and maybe of the size of the team. But for this purpose, I would say that students were very, very happy, for example, in group that used Onshape. Also, we received a lot of positive feedback on Autodesk Fusion. The thing is that what we wanted to test, we wanted to test actually various tools, because in order to see whether there are some benefits or not, because not a lot of studies are conducted in that manner. Very often people only analyze one tool as such, and they talk about the pros and cons of each individual tool, but they're never comparing. Also, what we noticed is that students very often, they believe that maybe they will not use all these tools because they're not commonly accepted, widely accepted in industry. So sometimes they decide still to go with CATIA, or they use Creo or tools like that. So that's again one obstacle that I think we noticed. So in general, I would say that CAD as such is a huge problem in terms of collaborative work, and I'm looking forward to see what else will be offered, because also additional thing regarding 3D experience, it has very high requirements in terms of computer power. It has very high requirements. It's also tricky in terms of let's say licensing, in terms of, so there are various problems, I would say, that are connected. Although 3D experience as such is a professional tool, is a very good tool. It's but in terms of, if we talk about more open source development, or let's say opening education, or allowing more, let's say allowing online distant work, I would say that that's quite tricky in terms of education.
Absolutely.
Sorry if I'm talking too much.
Not at all, not at all. It's interesting to hear. Certainly, yeah, thinking about, over time, the development of CAD and into distributed CAD and CAD management, it's been a major part of the design research that's gone on. And nowadays, it almost seems like, the tools are available to the companies that have the money, but for students, they still don't have a great solution at this moment in time. I'll open it up if there's any other questions out there. If you want to unmute your microphone, raise your hand. Katharina, I see you've raised your hand.
Yes, I think actually very interesting. I think we could join our forces definitely in this point. And one question I also had was, what fields of study are your students from? Is it only mechanical engineering, or is it a mixed?
This year, I would say mostly, I would say all of them mostly mechanical engineering.
Okay.
This year, because previous years we had maybe industrial designers. Previous years we changed it a bit. We had some electrical engineering ones, but this year they're all mechanical engineers. So, which is of course a very, very good point that you raised, because, for example, if we would use industrial designers, they would use completely different set of tools. Yeah. So this will be an additional problem, well, even like in terms of surface-based modeling versus solid-based modeling and things like that. So yes.
So we integrated this year's international management students, and that changed the whole project course from 100%, I would say. So it was really an interesting insight, I can say.
Yes, I mean, previously I had we had a collaboration with the faculty of architecture, and we had to teach also CAD, let's say SolidWorks, but more solid-based modeling to them. It's completely different mindset. Yeah. And of course, I mean, our students have troubles, let's say, with their way of
yes, of course,
designing in ours and their with ours. So to find something in between it's actually quite tough, but I think also quite interesting for students.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian, you also wanted to chip in?
Yes, I'm curious. You one of your bullet points said they prefer visual or schematic communication over written. Can you elaborate on that?
The problem is that if you give them too much text, they're not willing to read. So especially they will not go back. So if you give them schema, or if you give them some very nice visualization, then I think it's easier to grasp message, because now, especially afterwards, when they need to recall what was said during the initial workshop, for them it will be easier if they have clear figure, and it's easier for them, I think, to grasp the message than if you give them long textual description, which I believe it's, I don't know, you guide them to a certain textbook or to a certain chapter, and maybe they're not willing to read. But even if they're willing to read, it's hard. I think it's harder for them to get the message. So yeah.
Did you spend time converting things then to visual communication?
Well, actually, we believe that it was enough visual at the beginning. So we tried, because we learned that even from year before. So we tried to do some of these things, but even that was not sufficient. I mean, based on this generation, it was not sufficient. So they would like even more visual representation and let's say clear procedures for everything, clear bullet points, clear. I don't know what's reason for that, because we believe we tried our best to do that even immediately from beginning of this year, but obviously not successful enough.
Yeah. Okay. Nicolo, do you want to come in on that as well?
If I manage to open the mic, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Stanko, for the presentation. Unfortunately, I managed to get inside the meeting a little bit late, so I didn't know what happened before. Let's say that with reference to what Stanko said and about what Brian asked, I think that despite we did ready-to-use recipes to students, there are two things that are worth to mention. The first one is that they are not so familiar with design methods and tools as structured tools, let's say. So they are much more familiar with dimensioning rather than with the application of methods, conceptual design methods. And this time they were asked to develop concepts, maybe embody something, but in a way they were asked to develop concepts, and it's kind of changing their mindset that we probably need to tackle even more differently than we did this year compared to previous years, since this is year 2. And what I experienced personally, as I was part of the coaches last year, and I, in a way, follow the work of coaches this year. My idea is that even if students have something written, they definitely get benefit from having not just schematics, but some live explanation of what's behind the schema. Since I clearly saw a step change when they received some, live, still from distance, due to the COVID situation, but something that happened through Teams or other ways to handle online meetings. So when they get this kind of explanation, maybe looking at the educator's face, they made a step change. So they understood better what's inside the recipes that they already received in a schematic form somehow.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point in terms of, I've noticed it myself when you're teaching live, getting that one-on-one feedback, you're trying to encourage the students to really reflect on their practices, what they're doing, as opposed to, you just put up a video or instructions and tell them to go away to do it. It's difficult to know if they're actually, really understanding the process. Brian, do you want to get set up for your presentation? I see that time's kind of ticking over.
Yes.
Also, I noticed a message coming from Ryan in the chat. Perhaps after Brian's talk, we can come back and visit that.
Okay, are you seeing a big purple screen now?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, Ross asked me to talk about some tools that I've been using for 3 years. I'm Brian Howell. I teach industrial design at Brigham Young University in Utah in the Rocky Mountain area. And I teach a history of design course. And I've found that the students would spend hours looking at Instagram and in fact using Instagram and to educate themselves about other designers. And so I was thinking, I had some students, some assistants talking to me about how we might integrate Instagram into our teaching methods, and we've been practicing that for 3 years and we'll continue to practice it. So this is some of the items that we will, so I'm going to share that experience with you. This is our Instagram class. We have the students all share a single account that they use to log in and present their work with. Each student is asked to present on a notable historic industrial designer, and the way they create a page, a post that Instagram allows 10 pages. So they create a 10-page, limited to 10 pages per presentation or per designer. And I give them instructions on what the content of the first and kind of the last page of their presentation should be, and then it's up to them to do the research and fill in the middle pages. They talk about, I give them a kind of a rubric of what they should study and how, and then ask them to apply that knowledge to some contemporary design work or some of their own design work. And then I've also encouraged them to ask for questions that would engage a wider audience, because we post all of these on Instagram and they're public, so anyone can view them. And then I was also hoping that the students would speak to each other outside of the classroom, at night or on the weekends, about each other's postings. So that we did it the first year and learned a lot, and we changed it radically the second year. And these are the 5 things that we messed around with or explored the second year. Presenting, we actually tried to use Instagram as a presentation tool. And I required the students to comment because I wanted them to create this conversation outside of the classroom. And then we provided them templates. And in the first year we did it, they didn't post the entire presentation. They usually just posted 1 or 2 slides from it. And this year, or last year, we had them create and post their entire presentation. And we've included, in this template, we've included kind of a search function that allowed students to find their work. So I have 1 and 2 in red because they were not very successful, and the rest were very successful. So I'm gonna show you those. So at the very first, we tried to use Instagram itself as a presentation tool. So this is our website, and we thought, okay, we can just post our presentations online, and we can open up a presentation, and we can click through the presentation. But as you can see, there's an arrow here and an arrow here. There's also an arrow out here, and that takes you to the next major posting, right? So these jump through. So the students in their presenting, while they were presenting, would get often confused about which arrow to click. and it would cause a lot of chaos. Also, there's a size problem. They weren't using the entire screen, so they would futz around with zooming in and zooming out, right, to try and show details. So very quickly, we ended that process and just went back to PDFs. However, since I've changed that, I've also learned just last night in preparing for this that there is a way to eliminate those other arrows, and you can only find one arrow now. So maybe as of last night, maybe Instagram could be a way to present rather than going to PDFs or PowerPoints. So we did a mid-course survey and found that the students really disliked being forced to comment. And over here in this area, you can see how, I don't know, what snarky some of the students get when they are asked or forced to, required to comment, right? This student talks about nothing to do with Raymond Loewy, but about working with his kids on something else, right? So he's just posting something to post something. And that was not accomplishing what we were hoping for in any way. So we eliminated that halfway through as well. But what we did find is that they really liked using Instagram. They found it meaningful and valuable. And we also kind of, we required they use our templates this year. And they also commented that they much preferred using a template over a PowerPoint. And I think these are the reasons why. It set content expectations, quantity expectations. They only have 10 pages, period, right, for their whole presentation. So they have to edit their own work. When I allowed students just to do PowerPoint, you know, we could have a 30 or 40 page PowerPoint, which was an overabundance of information. They also found that it enabled them to make their aesthetic or building presentations faster because they kind of just had to fill in the slots. And for the Instagram, it can create a visual consistency, and it enabled designers to build in a search function. So the first year we did it, this is a screenshot of the first year. And so there's an inconsistency and you really have no idea what you're looking at. The students used very few words. They could be 3 pages or 10 pages of content, and it was just basically random. After we built in this template, you can now see that there's some cohesiveness on the web page. It's easy to know who you're looking at because the name of the designer is on each page. So it's every page has 10 pages of content that you can scroll through, and the aesthetics decisions are kind of managed for them. So some important things to know about the template is that Instagram is a square format, and when we first started, we kind of used a more rectangle, and we had to force everyone back into a square format. So on the left would be a template, and we built these in InDesign, and then on the right would be how a student converted that template into their presentation. And so those are 3 template examples and how they were modified. I think it's important to provide, you know, allows students to have variations. And so they can do, you know, 4 squares over here, or they can even do a third and 2/3. But it always has to stay in the Instagram square format. So we're going to continue using Instagram in future courses. Even though we started this online 3 years ago, I think it's going to become more important in this new environment. And the stories that have come back from the students say that they access this at their work or at their employment, or they access it when they're traveling. And so it's shown itself to be a more fixed or archival, instant archival means for students to go back and reference their own work. I've posted the instructions. If you've never used Instagram, these are my instructions that I give the students on how to use it. And I have 2 papers that talk about this process, and those can be found here. All right, that's all I have.
Thanks very much, Brian. That was really interesting to hear about, and it goes back to a bit of what Stanko was saying earlier on. If you try to encourage the students to use tools, they'll use whatever they want. But if the tool's good, such as Instagram, and it's what they're used to using in their personal life, and it's nicely designed, and you give them easy instructions to follow, then yeah, it makes sense, and they want to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Nicolo has a question.
Oh, your microphone's off. There you go.
Is it now working? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say that what we experience with Stanko through the LPIT class is that it's not so easy to show students outcomes from previous years, as they are somehow protected by some confidentiality and things like this. While probably what you've done through Instagram can be used as a source of inspiration for next students' year. Can you tell us something about this? Did you have any experience about this? I'm asking this mainly because this year we experienced something beyond LPIT. I mean, shifting to online learning, we had to prepare a lot of materials that probably can be reused in next years beyond of the pandemic situation. And it would be nice for me to understand if and how much students go back to what other students did in previous years to learn a little bit better. So this can be one of the early experience that we can reflect upon.
Okay, so that's a great question. And because I just have one Instagram account, I have 3 years worth of classwork, right, posted. And I often thought, well, are this year's students just going to go look at last year's presentation and basically copy it, right? Because we repeat, the majority of designers, we repeat every year. And I worried a bit about that, and then I said, that's fine, I guess, because they're still learning. The new students are still learning what the last students did last year, and then they typically add in their own thoughts and ideas on top of that. So I really haven't seen any direct plagiarism, but I also think that they are using those as a starting point to say, oh, this is what this person is about. So I think it's a good learning tool as a primer for them to go out and do the research on that individual designer.
May I ask one question? Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's very, very interesting, because we realize we also in some other courses, we have let's say we have similar assignments each year, let's put it that way. So students often at least they check what was previously done. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to ask you if you can comment 2 things. So I mean, fixation. I mean, in a way, because if you use templates, in a way you immediately fix them to a certain way of representing this information. And why I'm asking that, because what we realized when we changed completely, for example, assignments and tasks, we realized that, and we left, let's say, open space on what they can do. We realized that some were brilliant and they were way above our expectations, and due to that, we realized that maybe some teams that worked collaboratively or something, because they didn't have fixed template or fixed guidelines, they did way better than all the others. So in a way, they're fixed and they're limited maybe with certain templates. What do you think? What's your perspective?
Yes. So let's see, am I still sharing?
Yes.
Yep.
So,
Yes.
so let me go back to let's see this page. Okay, so hopefully you can see the Instagram site now?
Yep.
Is that correct? Okay, great.
Yes.
So you can see some variety here, on how they've approached, this opening page. So I'm not holding them hard to a template, and you can see these are older ones, and you can see that once they got comfortable with it, they started to vary from it slightly. And I'm looking for one in particular. So one student grabbed it and really pushed the template to her own personality, which was fantastic. So for those who need the template, I think it worked out well for them. And for those who accepted the template and then felt strong to push it forward, here, this is the one I'm looking for. So this person kept the basic guidelines of the template, but really pushed the emotional and visual content quite a bit further than some of the other ones that were, a little more just follow the template exactly, like this one.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, but may I ask one additional one?
Yeah.
Actually, but also first they did initial version on Instagram, and then they switched to PowerPoint presentation. So can you please comment to what extent they changed? So could you easily perceive some changes due to a different format, or they kept all the content the same? So can you please comment on that?
Let me explain that a little bit better. So we provide the template in InDesign, and the students build their presentations in InDesign currently. In previous years, I let them use PowerPoint, and that's when things got really large and unwieldy. So now they build them in InDesign, and then they either export it as a PDF, and that's what they currently show in class. But InDesign also lets you export individual pages as JPEGs, and that's what they post on Instagram. So now I have my industrial design students build in InDesign.
Okay, thank you. Thanks
very much.
Sorry for misunderstanding. Yeah.
We're coming towards the end of our time just now, so I'm just going to wrap things up, and we might have a bit more of an informal chat afterwards. Just give me a few seconds to upload the final slides. So thank you very much to all our speakers for today and for everyone who attended. The video of this recording will be on the Design Society website, available to members, and you can share it with your friends and colleagues there. If you're looking for more answers on how to move online, there's lots of answers from the ENPD conference, which is the Design Education SIG conference. So have a look at the DSIG subsite there, education.designsociety.org. Also, you might want to visit the Design Society website as well, where you'll get even more papers from different conferences such as ICED, Design 2020, and many, many others. And also, if you want to be alerted for future chat rooms, then you can head onto the Design Society website, open your profile, and make sure you have the chat room box ticked. Thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, it's been really interesting to hear all of the different experiences in our transition to online.